Doom 2 Ray Traced. It dropped this week, and of course, we have to look at it. This is the second video we're making on Doom this week, and what better game to make multiple videos on, because Doom is arguably the greatest game ever made. And I could go into so many reasons why that is, but no, today we're going to talk about the ray trace version of Doom, and you can't talk about ray tracing without Alex Battaglia, so he's here too.
Of course. I mean, I covered the original Doom ray trace when it was more an April Fool's joke back then, before Quake ray tracing came out. And I'm excited to talk about this today because, well, it's a mixture of actually multiple mods in one.
That's right, and it turned out great. This one dropped, and one of the first things I have to say before we even get into how it works and what it does is the actual setup process was beautiful for this. I felt like it was very streamlined, and they've built this whole custom introduction sequence, which is just awesome. And then they've sort of like redone the menu in this way. You can still get to the old GZD menu, of course, but they sort of built a front end specifically to facilitate these sort of ray tracing features, and even added some other niceties that we'll see later in this video. So it's a very, very cool package that makes a strong first impression. But once you jump in, of course, instantly you kind of see the benefits of what this is. And I also feel like there's a little bit of a caveat here, or something we need to say is, like, you know, I think the original look of Doom, the software version of Doom, that is the way Doom looks. I love that. I actually prefer that to this. But these sorts of visual mods, this is part of the Doom legacy, and I think it's cool that such things exist. And this one especially, I think, is very, very neat. And throughout this video, you're going to see footage of me using both the voxelized models, but then also the sprites. I kind of went back and forth on them a little bit. So I want to start with, where did this mod come from, and who made it, and everything. So Alex, why don't you fill us in on this?
So the base of the mod in terms of rendering tech is built off of what happened with Doom ray tracing, or Doom path tracing, depending on how you look at it. And that was made by Sultan Srendashev. And that work, though, as far as I recall, was built on PR Boom Plus.
Mm-hmm.
And this was migrated over to GZ Doom. So that gives it a greater level of compatibility with other modding. And a lot of the modding these days actually does happen on GZ Doom, some of the biggest mods that are out there. Another aspect of it, this was, I believe, though, done by someone else named Vasily, not Sultim. And another aspect of it that you just mentioned was the voxel models. Now, those are made by Nash Mohandes and a person named Chilo, Daniel Wienerson on Twitter. I covered the Voxel Doom project in the past before, but this is kind of integrating two of those mods together and putting them into this ray tracing pipeline. On top of the fact that it also, very interestingly, alongside this renderer that was made originally for the Doom ray tracing, you can also run it with the RTX Remix runtime. Apparently, I have yet to do that, but that would give even more control over the rendering to the user, as well as offer up things like DLSS ray reconstruction, which currently is not at all open source to the level where you can just drop it in some sort of user mod project. So that's the idea, as well as the fact that to make this in the first place, Doom is obviously not made with ray tracing in mind. So someone had to go in and change up the level lighting. It just doesn't work automatically.
That's one of the main benefits here, is that we actually get to see Doom running where every single light in the scene is a true dynamic light. So, and each of those lights actually casts shadows. And beyond the actual dynamic lights, such as the particles and the lights placed in the scene and things like the skylight, there's also emissives. So things like slime and lava in certain stages, some of the portals, lights, there's things in there that it's just like a large surface area that's like a texture, and then that texture actually emits light and sort of fills the room with the corresponding color, which looks extremely cool. Beyond that, then, the other cool thing that I think they added was the particle-based fluid simulation. So this is used for blood. It looks a little bit over the top, but I think it kind of showcases what they're trying to do here, where when you blast a monster, huge splatters of blood come flying out of them. It'll stick to the walls, it'll dribble down the stairs. It actually isn't just like a decal, as they would say. It is a genuine moving fluid simulation. And it even has sort of refractions and reflections going on within the environment. So it is cool when you finish a large skirmish, you'll actually see like sort of the blood dripping down the walls and pooling on the floor below, which is something we've never seen in Doom before, and you don't really see very often either, which is super cool.
Fluids are very seldomly seen in games, and when we do, no matter how ridiculous they are, like here they remind me of like the ultra violence you can see in the Blade movie, if you've ever seen Blade. Yes. Like it really does remind me of that, and I like it. I think it's interesting to see also how it plays into the rest of the ray tracing, because usually transparency is one of the hardest parts of ray tracing of any sort. Yep. Translucency, and here they're given proper reflection and surface level reflections too. So speaking of reflections though, did you notice any in the environment special textures that were given reflectivity?
Of course, yeah. So first of all, liquids have this, so things like water actually does reflect now, and funnily enough, if that's even a word, they use sort of the original animation speed of the water texture rather than updating it to look more realistic, so it kind of updates at like a low rate, right, as the water ripples. But they actually also added a lot of mirrored surfaces into the world, so sometimes there's just actual mirrors, and other times you'll have like surfaces like the ceiling in certain areas where the entire ceiling has become sort of a reflective mirror, and you can look up and just see everything happening below, though it kind of reminds me of the original Unreal. You know what I'm talking about. Yeah. But that's cool to see as well. So I guess the main thing to keep in mind, though, is that all of this stuff had to be sort of redone by hand, right? So I haven't actually tried it, but I gather you can't just throw any old modded map in there and just have it work, because there's a lot of stuff that was done to make these maps look as good as they do. Because none of this information required is in those maps to begin with, right? So, but they actually also did some really neat stuff with sort of surfaces, where you have textures and such that have actual depth now, which, one, it looks cool when you get up close to a surface, but also it looks cool when combined with the real-time lighting now, since it sort of like fills the space and you get sort of this little, it actually gives it proper depth, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I for me, when I look at these kind of mods, I'm always interested in to see the things that they had to do to bring it into the modern era with this lighting. And in this case, I think, as far as I understand, it is a one-person show. It's Vasily gentleman who worked on it. And them having to update every single level, I'm not so surprised that other GZ Doom mod things don't work off the bat, kind of immediately when you load up the game. Like you mentioned that you tried to get other music into the game, right?
Oh,
and that
right, yeah. I tried to inject music wads, not even maps, and I wasn't able to get any of that stuff to load for some reason. It would actually show up in the console, but it didn't work.
Yeah. But okay, so beyond the visuals themselves, how do the voxel models look, would you say, when ray tracing is applied to them? Because the original conceit of the voxel models from Nesh Mohandas and Chilo was to give that lo-fi look, extra depth, like you could have seen in a theoretical build engine Doom game. But how do you think they look with ray tracing?
I think it works fairly well overall. I'm actually, so the voxel mod I've actually found to be most useful when playing Doom in VR on the Quest 3, because when you're in VR, sprites do tend to look very flat and wrong, I think. But when playing actual Doom, I'm still kind of a fan of the overall sprite, the flat billboard look. I just feel like that fits the animation best. But the extra depth is nice because the light does correctly play off of them, and you get proper shadows from them as well. Now, the sprites do cast shadows, I should note, so that looks good, but obviously it looks a little weird, right? Because you're generating sort of a realistic shadow from a 2D billboard. So
yeah, it's probably done in a really BS way,
right? But when you have like when you go into like a dark area and you've got like the volumetric light streaming in from the sun outdoors and casting across the various voxel models, it can look striking. Like this almost feels like somebody made like an art project diorama of a Doom level and put it into a game. You know what I mean? It actually almost looks like you're looking at a little diorama that somebody crafted of Doom, which is cool. All of this stuff is awesome, but that doesn't mean there aren't some limitations, I guess. one of the biggest problems, of course, with any sort of ray tracing is the denoising step. As you mentioned, RTX Remix compatibility should allow you to use ray reconstruction. In my case, it was not working for this. I didn't have time to fiddle more, but I couldn't get RTX Remix to work properly on this game. It would fire up with the menu, but even when you wait for, because it does say that the initial load takes long for compilation, it never actually loaded the map. So I'm not sure what's up with that. I'll have to troubleshoot that later. But with its current version, when just playing standalone, I would say the denoiser, it struggles a little bit. They're basically, because Doom itself is so fast that you're whipping around at such speed, you have lights that like essentially fill the entire room and then instantly cut and you're back to darkness, which is like a nightmare scenario for the sort of ray tracing that we see in real-time games, right? Because it takes time for the rays to sort of recoalesce, because the whole idea is that you're shooting out just enough rays to make a nice enough image, and then the denoiser sort of like blends them together to create something that feels cohesive, but you don't have enough rays to allow for like this instant transition from light to dark, and so the denoiser takes time to recoalesce. So you can actually find yourself sort of painting over the scenery sometimes, like, oh, it's light, and now you paint your gun over it and you see the darkness follows in its wake. And also there's a lot of speckling and noise that happens that can be a little bit unpleasant looking at times. But I would say by and large, like 85% of the time, it's generally fine. But you would definitely notice some points where it falls a little short, and you're like, man, ray reconstruction would be excellent.
Would have really helped. Yeah, ray reconstruction, in spite of some of the faults I've shown in videos about it, it is extremely responsive. So it would be really great to see working here. Another thing you can do to technically help reduce that time, like, would be just to run the game at a higher frame rate. That would make the denoiser just slightly more responsive. But obviously this is ray tracing. I talked about the performance of Doom ray tracing in my old video. This correlates pretty well to that in my experience. So if you want to know like what it requires to play this game, John and I only really played it on 4090s here. Go back to my Doom video and you can get a sense of how that'll run. And it runs pretty well.
It does. It also has DLSS. It has frame generation. It has FSR2, which is nice. But then it also has several other filters that I really appreciate, including a downsampling pixel filter. It has original Doom resolution. It has 16 color variants of 320 by 200 and 640 by 400, which is really funny. So you get the nice strong dither pattern. But my favorite is they have a CRT filter, a VHS filter, and like a VHS something filter. But the basic VHS filter adds sort of this like filmic noise to it, sort of blooms out the lights and adds distortion while pixelating the graphics. And this to me actually really does give it like this like weird 90s-ish vibe that I found really awesome. And that ended up being the way I preferred to play this. It just gave it this crunchy look that kind of worked well with the lighting, almost like you're looking at a fake CGI version of Doom that would have been made in the 90s. You know? Yeah.
It's like you could imagine in some sort of movie where they pan over to a character who's a game developer and he's showing off his game and it looks like this weirdo CGI thing.
I mean,
I love the filters.
Not that playing a game would have VHS artifacts, mind you. It's more that I'm thinking about those old tapes they used to send out, right? Like new N64 games coming where, you know...
Like the one that came with Donkey Kong?
Yeah, that sort of stuff.
DK64.
Exactly. It gives it that vibe, which is really, really fun. So that's pretty awesome, I gotta say. And beyond that, this is just Doom 2 right now. So this is the Doom 2 campaign, which I'm always up for replaying. I've always preferred it to Doom 1, to be honest, mainly because I feel like Sandy Peterson's stuff in Doom 1 really drags down Doom 1's level design. No. In Doom 1 as well.
Oh, you're talking about episode.
Yeah. The second and third episode, especially the second episode in Doom 1, I feel really suffers from like warehousism, you know? And Doom 2 does have some of those types of levels, although I gained a new appreciation for them after playing it in VR, where it just kind of, especially the downtown map, where you finally get... Downtown in VR is extremely coherent and awesome, but in normal Doom, it's a little less enjoyable, I would say.
Yeah, Doom, when it has a lot of height, actually gets a little bit confusing due to the lack of Z look. And yeah, so I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I would love to see where the community takes this next, because I feel like GZ Doom as a base for this tracing is way better than it was in the past due to the compatibility it'll offer. I kind of would love to see something like Hexen actually done with this, or Heretic, because obviously Doom is its own look and it's kind of like own set of textures, but I feel like a game like Hexen was already kind of slower paced and maybe would lend itself more to the atmospheric effects that you see here. So I would love to see someone take a crack at that. Yeah.
So a couple other things I want to mention then. First of all, there is an option to sort of play this in split screen mode, and you can also tap the C button to sort of seamlessly transition between the original graphics and the ray trace graphics. I've shown it a few times already in the video, I think. So I think that's really fun to showcase how the different lighting impacts the overall visual quality. There's also, and I like this one, they added support for HDR. So if you have an HDR display, you can use it, and oh boy, is it intense. Possibly too intense at times, especially the sky, which sky lighting should be bright, and I think it works, but the problem is that they didn't update the sky textures, so like it's the original textures that don't look great with HDR applied, and also they're extremely pixelated. I would have liked some changes to the sky box that they've done, because it is actually more of a sky sphere now, I think, rather than the way it used to work in Real Doom in the software render. So, but still, overall, I think everything here is just amazing to see. It doesn't, like I said, it doesn't replace the original Doom at all. It's not meant to. This is a cool experimental feature that allows you to replay Doom in a way that you've probably never seen before, which is the whole point here. And replaying these maps again, with ray tracing, it does breathe, some new life into them.
Yeah, having played Doom 2, I can't even count how many times. This is a cool, fun new way to play it, and I hope everyone does check it out. And it's, like John said, really easy to install. No problem at all there. You can use your own WAD, but I think it actually, if you have it installed via Steam or maybe even GOG, it'll just automatically like scrape it for you there and do it for you. So it should be pretty easy to do.
Yep, exactly. But anyway, thanks for joining me, Alex. I think that's pretty good. Always good to talk about Doom. Love your shirt.
Always. Thank you.
And that's going to do it for this video, so thanks for watching.